Haya, just please introduce yourself. Now we have actually a live person with a voice.
So embarrassing.
The same beautiful smile. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Haya Maayan. I live in Cleveland, Ohio, for the past 15 years. And I'm a teacher in Mizrahi, teacher assistant in Mizrahi school. I have 4 kids, a wonderful husband. And without his support, I wouldn't be doing this. So
Yeah, what'd he say? What'd he say?
he's proud and amazing, blah, blah, blah. And it's
Yeah.
like really overwhelming, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not used to I never do like selfie or, things like that. So this is like out of my
Hi,
comfort zone.
hi, can you see the comments at the bottom?
No.
Oh, you can't see them? Oh, you're getting
No.
a lot of love. Dahlia says she's obsessed with you.
Right back at you guys.
Okay.
Oh
No, well, I've said this before in our stories, but Haya, your post, post one, I think got almost 500 likes. Like you just blew it out the water and people were so inspired by your journey and your story. So I know this wasn't so comfortable, but I think hopefully you felt that it paid back. Can you just share, yours was the first profile in the interview where I wanted to include why you joined this project and why you felt it was important. Can you tell our listeners, why you decided to allow yourself to be featured on Faces of Orthodoxy?
Well, first of all, I don't see a lot of Ethiopian Jews in America. And if I see them, it's like a miracle. And also like in a lot of posts, I don't see other, diversity. So one of the most important part was to show, especially my kids, because, sometimes they have, like a little, not doubts, but like sometimes they try to like understand, like how, like what do they belong? Like, are they more Ethiopian? Are they, like they wanted to like not incorporate, but like to be part of a community, to feel loved for who they are and not being judged by like, oh, your mom is white, is Ethiopian and your dad is white. So like I want my kids to feel proud and and they can bring so much to the community. So one of the reason I did is my children, and second of all is to teach other people that Jews come from all over, beautiful and different customs and beautiful traditions, and we just have to, if you just sit down and listen and learn and inspire every day, I think our community will be much bigger and lovable. And avat chinam, I think it's one of the most important things.
Yeah, avat chinam is free love, right? Like no strings attached, without judgments. And I think that you're so right. Like you need to hear people's stories and sit down with them and learn about them. I remember when I came to do the photo shoot with you, like you sat us down, you had this beautiful Turkish coffee little station set up for us, and we just sat down and had coffee together. And it's like, you live in my community, I've seen you walk down the street, I really, we have nothing to do with each other otherwise, but when you have those opportunities, so that's what Faces of Orthodoxy does, is this is coming into people's living rooms and wherever they are, and they can learn about you and hear your stories, and that is why it's so important. So thank you so much. Okay, Alex, so tell us a little bit about yourself, and also love to hear why you wanted to participate in this.
All right, so my name's Alex Greenfield. I'm an artist. I have 3 kids, and we live in Cleveland. Because that's a general background. I lived all over the country. We recently moved to Cleveland about 4 years ago. So I mean, that's a little bit about myself. And I wanted to, join mainly because it's, it's an opportunity. Like I said, like my job isn't, a standard job. Yeah, and in the Jewish community, it is accepted, but it's it's not fully understood, like the whole practice of art. I just thought it would be a good opportunity to show another side of let's say the creative process, and show people that these extracurricular, especially in like the Frum community, the extracurricular aspects of life can be equally as beneficial to your Yiddishkeit as can I say, maybe not learning Torah, but you know, it's so substantial in somebody's being to be able to do something, to create something. And I mean, that's one of the main messages that, you know, I try to give over with my art. And this is obviously a great platform to share, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So
really, like the extracurriculars, whether it's art or sports or music, I think also they enable you to really tap into who you are besides the academics, you know, right? Like
100%. Yeah.
And if you don't have those opportunities, you don't even know your potential in many of those areas.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you discover yourself, you know, through whatever craft or medium you do. Yeah. Like you said, music. I mean, these are all arts. If you look back in the day, I mean, you know, the master artists like Michelangelo, you know, all these people, they were inventors, they were sculptors, they were painters, they did architecture, they did everything. Because there's like a certain drive behind, you know, the creative process, and I'm sure they were musicians as well, you know, but there's a certain drive that in a sequence as you're creating that you can apply to everything in life. And yeah, and I mean, it meshes perfectly together with like Yiddishkeit, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And I know you worked in, my kids never had you, but I know that you worked in the day school a little bit, right? Doing
Yeah.
art, woodworking. So it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
such a blessing to have that opportunity for these kids.
Yeah, it was awesome. I've taught before we moved here. I actually taught in Darkei Torah, and they had a small they had a small wood shop. One table saw it was a mess. Like the whole place was a disaster. I came in like 2 to 3 years. We ended up. This is me doing woodworking. We ended up building, like, we got donations, almost $60,000 worth of tools. We had state of the art equipment, you know, and I mean the kids, you just see them develop. And just love my class. I just used to hear all the time. It's like the reason why, even from parents, I heard parents even say that their kids have become more religious from my class, because it just gives them, it gives them a purpose, a place to excel, and to, you know, to show themselves. And, you know, and then I came to, it's actually, teaching's a dream job of mine. I mean, it's a little hard with the kids. I go back and I have a little bit PTSD, you know, with the behavior and that aspect of it. But, you know, it's almost a dream job to teach, because I love seeing the kids experience that excitement when they finish something and you give them a compliment and they see it and they grow from it. So definitely, yeah, I had to take, you know, now that I'm building up my art stuff, basically once I retire, I'm going to go back to teaching, essentially.
Oh,
so I took
amazing.
some time off, but I did, like, I love it. And I do want to do it, you know, again in the future, and plan on going back to Hebrew Academy. I really enjoyed teaching.
Yeah, that's great. That's really beautiful. So we really have two teachers here in a funny way. And I also just wanted to say, we're just honored really to show your artwork on our page. Originally, you know, when I asked you for background pictures, you said, I think we discussed like setting, you know, some pictures of your art, and I just wasn't sure because it's a little bit different than what we had been doing in the past, which is showing, you know, pictures of people's lives, and it's just added so much to the count. And I'm sure you saw the love. People really are moved by your artwork, and the combination. I find it very religiously inspiring, your pieces. I mean, they're very moving, and it just, I think, added so much to your profile.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. Okay, so let's jump into our discussion today. You know, it's clear for both of you that you are unique individuals through your story. And I think that's one of the traits that comes in through your stories is your strong sense of individuality. And, you know, it's interesting. There are some people who I think have more of a confidence and a sense of pride in being an individual, and others are more conformist types, and there's no judgment here. But there often are two types of people when it comes to individuality. You know, those who are more comfortable sort of letting their colors shine, and others who feel more comfortable going with the flow and not, you know, not standing out in any way. So it really was a complete coincidence that your stories were back to back. But what we like to do with the lives, I guess Hashem is sort of helping orchestrate this, is have our audiences meet our profiles, meet our subjects who are profiles on the account. And then we try to think, you know, how can we have a conversation that's meaningful, that will be meaningful to both of you too, and you know, relevant. So I'd like to know from each of you, and Alex, we'll start with you. What does individuality mean to you? What does that term mean? And secondly, in the context of orthodoxy, as an Orthodox Jew, do you think that is an important trait or characteristic for a Jew and an observant Jew to be an individual?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you look at going back in time, like our forefathers, right? I mean, Avram Ivri, like, who was on the other side, and then you have,
Right.
I believe it was Yitzchak, but I mean, it's obviously Yaakov as well. I mean, they were commended for being, even growing up in the houses of like our forefathers, they were all different, and that's a big aspect. So Judaism in itself is, it what's it called? It honors, the fact that, there's like a level of individuality, and it can be, through your Torah learning, chesed and din, and, like a balance between the two with like Yaakov and stuff. But it can also, it can translate in many ways, essentially. So, I mean, I said this in my post, an art teacher used to say, if you're uncomfortable, you're learning, and to go with the flow is implying it's, what's it called? It's easy. And, you're not learning in certain elements. Everyone does go against the flow in like different areas. I highly doubt there's only, one, people who just go down, down the stream. But yeah, that level of individuality, that's shown through going against the flow. I mean, essentially, it builds your character. It creates, who you are. And you're constantly growing and learning, and being uncomfortable. That's that's how you succeed. And I'm telling you, and it's torture. I'm working on painting. I'm working on this painting now. I'm just making so many mistakes, but I go back and I fix it, and I learn from my mistakes, and I won't make that. Whenever I mess up, I could spend 3 weeks on something and start over. And I tell myself, how do I cope and not get upset? And the whole idea is, I just learn from my mistakes. I will not do that again. And you have to make sure you don't. And but the only way I can learn that is by going against the grain. I mean, I could paint the same image like all the time in the same style every time I'm doing a painting, and I won't make any mistakes. But I mean, it's just going to be black. Like, I mean, my whole energy and excitement through my work is going and being different and being individual. I mean, the first thing people say when they see my paintings, literally the first thing they say is, wow, that's so different.
Yeah.
And it's like 3-dimensional and it's textured. And, I take a lot of pride in that because I work so hard in that area. And, it's difficult. But, yeah, essentially people do, it is sometimes easy to just go with the flow. But, I think Judaism itself is essentially based off of individuality. I mean, we're like one nation, that's, I guess, America, but one nation under God. But we are, but we're essentially, we've been in exile for how many years, like in Gullus for, and I mean, and we're still a strong nation and we're still growing. And it's only because, we're connected, as a whole. Like, you do have to conform to some extent, but we're diverse, and we're able to like be in Gullus and still survive and succeed. And that's, if we were super, super insular, I mean, who knows what would have happened. I mean, we have to evolve and change, but still keep that identity as well. So it's a balance. But I guess that's what I'd say diversity is in Yiddishkeit.
And it's so interesting because I love what you're saying. Like, we have sources of this in the Torah, in the Tanakh, in the Bible of, our forefathers were the quintessential individuals. Abraham, I mean, Moshe, we have that tradition certainly in the Torah, and that's really fascinating. And I just love what you're saying about the art that you do sort of as a metaphor for being an individual and the painting process. It's funny, my father's a painter, and he has this thing. He was trained as a secular painter, similar to you with a secular background, and he has this thing like, Judaica is so cliche, the kotel or a Shabbat table, so cliche, he won't touch Judaica. And I actually showed him your pieces. I'm like, this is not cliche. It's just unbelievable what you've done with these very commonly painted subjects.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's true. You go to galleries and it's hard to pick out which artist is which, but it is what it is.
It is. Have you had any additional contacts from our project?
I've been
followers
hearing a lot
on Instagram.
Somebody asked me for my autograph in shul yesterday, so I mean,
nice.
I saw you. I want you, So I've definitely heard some buzz, and some friends sent me texts, and yeah. So I mean, I've definitely got some recognition from it.
Cute.
Which is it's a nice benefit.
Well, I told my husband, I mean, maybe you'll give me a discount or something, because I gotta have something of yours on my wall. Okay, Haya.
We'll
so tell us. Oh, there's my mom. I'm gonna give her a wave since I was talking about my dad. It's so nice to have her supporting me. Okay, Haya. Yeah, I'll give her a shout out. Okay,
Yeah.
tell us what individuality means to you, and also your perspective on, individuality and being an Orthodox Jew, and if that's an important trait that we should strive for.
Okay, so I mean, I feel individual by being me and trying to I guess it's like I have my own a flair, like I like the way I dress, and like how I show how I like how I accept myself, because if I don't accept myself, then how would other people accept me as individual? Because I don't want to be like everybody. I'm like my own person. So
see,
and
Haya,
that's how
some people want to, I'm going to stop you there, because some people do want to be like everybody. Like, that is frightening what you're saying.
So for me, it's important because everybody have different feelings, different taste, and like jewelry, makeup, like we all different the way we want to be. And if someone wants to be like someone else, then they have like they have to go deep with themselves first to find themselves, to ask like, why would you want to be like someone else? Because you individual will make you will add more to other people than you be like everybody else. I don't know if I explain it
Meaning,
well,
if you're
but
trying to be like everybody else, you'll never be yourself.
yes. Yeah.
So there's a beautiful, beautiful idea from Rav Zusha, it's Hasidic Rebbe. I don't know if you've heard this story, but essentially he said that when he, at the end of his life, when he goes to Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, after 120 years, God, Hashem, is going to say to him, is not going to say to him, why weren't you more like Moshe? He's going to say, why weren't you more like Zusha? So, like, if we're constantly comparing ourselves that we think we need to be like other people, Hashem just put us in this world with our own qualities, our own traits, our own strengths and our weaknesses.
100%.
And we cannot compare ourselves to other people. We have to be who, reach our own potential.
Yes, we cannot, because even like the 12 Shvatim, they all different. Like nobody was like Binyamin or like Levi or
tribes.
Yehuda. We all different people. They all different ideas and creativity, and like everybody have their own thing, that their own spice that they put together, so it's a nice salad or a nice soup. Like everybody have their own quality that they bring to Judaism. Like that's how I feel, by having my customs and my tradition from my family that we learned when we were little. Like you just have to be part of you're Jewish and you're going to be part of the community, but like you have to be proud of who you are before you even think that you can be part of a community.
So let me ask you a question, because I think some people struggle with that self-knowledge, that you were mentioning in the beginning, that like you have to be confident in yourself, but if you feel like you don't really know who you are, that often that's why we're looking at other people, as we are identifying more with others because we don't have that familiarity. Do you have any, you seem very like self-assured and confident. Do you have any tips for people who feel like they're still, and no matter what, doesn't matter what age they're at, trying to figure out like who they are and what they bring to the table?
Well, it took me years to accept myself for who I am, because I was like embarrassed talking to people or even like showing myself or giving ideas or advice to just a friend. And I said like to myself, I trained myself to like, if I don't accept me and love me for who I am, then why would other people want to hear me or accept me as a person, let alone as a Jew?
I love that. That's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, so question for both of you. Okay, we'll start with you, Haya. So now let's sort of bring this more into the, the society and the culture of Orthodox Judaism. Certainly we have in our tradition, and there are many, many sources that, and many examples, like Alex even mentioned earlier, of how, being an individual is embraced and is very important. Sometimes, however, people struggle when they're living in a community where often, there's a certain level of conformity that is required, and don't ever think that you can live on a mountain and that you will never have to deal with pressures to conform, because you can live in any society and there will always be a certain element of pressure to conform. So that's important to say off the bat. But I just looked at the dictionary definition of orthodoxy, and the second definition, by the way, is referring to Orthodox Judaism or Orthodox Christianity. But the first definition is the authorized or generally accepted theory, doctrine, or practice. So certainly in Orthodoxy, we have halakha, we have Jewish law that dictates how we behave, what we can do, what we can't do. And then there are all the social norms. And in many communities, that's, those social norms can be very strict in terms of, types of dress or appropriate dress, types of professions, appropriate professions. It all depends on, what exact community you may be in the Orthodox world. And for some people who may be more free spirits, that might be challenging. So I'm curious if you feel, and again, you're speaking from your own experience, and your particular Orthodox community, but in general, do you feel that there is room for individuality and orthodoxy? And how do we balance this very inevitable reality that conformity may be required because we live in communities, with seeking out individuality and being ourselves? So Alex, take it away.
All right. So I mean, first of all, that is definitely, for me, becoming more from and stuff. They don't teach you that in yeshiva, right? They teach you how to read a Gemara, halacha, but they do not tell you the elements of conformity in yeshiva until you're basically married. When I was single too, I just didn't know. I mean, yeah, there's like the community, but you don't have to worry about the schools. You don't have to worry about the clothing. You don't have to worry about, whatever it is, like all the stuff that goes with kids and, being married and that whole level. So that's definitely something that I find very difficult to do. So sorry, just real quick, because I kind of went off track. So your question was, your question was,
well, can you
deal with conformity?
Well, number one, I would say, practically, is individuality a value that you feel, that you see, that you can live in the Orthodox community?
Oh.
And secondly, this idea of conformity, it's necessary to a certain extent. How do you see it necessary? How do you see it as unnecessary? How do you strike that balance?
Okay. Yeah. So as you mentioned before, first of all, conformity, regarding halacha and those type of things. I mean, that's something
Jewish law. Yeah.
Yeah. That's like God's, word. So that's one thing. And obviously different people have, different ways to interpret, Jewish law. So, I mean, that area, okay, you can't go off the track. You're supposed to conform. But in regards to being individual in a Jewish community, you're basically, your question, sorry, is it beneficial? I'm not gonna, one thing
you could for sure take it that way. Yeah. And how do you balance, you are an individual. You talked about showing up to shul sometimes, wearing paint on your shirt, and no one else is wearing paint on their shirt. Yes. But you're proud of that. Those are your warrior badges.
Yeah. So I had a rabbi tell me in yeshiva once, he's like, I went home and I came back to America, and I never wore white and black because I felt like it wasn't me. Not that I didn't identify with that, but he told me, it's if you ever wear that, I don't know, he'd lose his mind. He's just it's impossible. You'll never, because he just knew who I was. I wouldn't have done it. So when I was so when I go to shul and these type of things, it's it's a self-identity, in a sense that it's very hard to find yourself. And I was very blessed to I was kind of forced into art, because my joke is I was bad at everything else. So I went into art. People oh, how did you go into art? I was bad at everything else. So I was able to identify, who internally, who I am, what I want to do, with my life. And then, in order to conform, myself and my identity, how do I do that with Yiddishkeit? I mean, when I was secular, I was not painting. I'm not going to say what I was painting, it was in art school. I was not painting Jewish stuff. So how do you conform? What I do is I take myself and my beliefs and I apply it into Yiddishkeit and Judaism. And what's that? It's, it's Torah subjects and Jewish subjects. So it's, and then the community is accepting. They're not Nebuch, he's an artist, and it's, I heard it once, but like I never, you never hear it. And I even consider art. It's funny. I asked my wife the other day. Clay Kodesh is like, people say I want to go into Clay Kodesh. I want to go into things that involve, only like holy matters. So you become a scribe, a sofer, or you become a teacher, a rabbi, these type of things. And I asked my wife, I'm like, how come art wouldn't be considered Clay Kodesh? I mean, when I'm painting, if I do a Kriyas Yam, so the splitting of the sea, when I'm painting that, I go back, I have a chavrusa, and, or I'll go in and I'll actually learn, the different mefarshim, the explanations and, what everything looked like. And I'll actually learn the Torah, or I did a Kohen Gadol. And I made sure everything, the textures of the fabric, the color, the patterns, the stones, the size of the breastplate, the stitching on the sleeves, like every aspect of the painting, I like learned Torah, and then I produced it. And now I probably know, like, the whole way, because I created a painting of it. I know the whole structure of like the Kohen Gadol's clothing. So I'm involved in Torah all day when I'm painting. And, I won't start painting or like doing work unless like I've learned, or if I have, I have to have a certain mindset. If I'm doing like a big gadol, I'll like learn their Torah. I'll like look into it and like, because you have to come in with a good mindset, essentially being connected. So, I mean, that's, I guess the bridge between being individual and also, conforming is, to apply it. And that's why I think, my art's 10 times deeper, because I have Yiddishkeit, because I have all these depths and this like understanding, appreciation, like what I'm trying to represent is something a million times greater than I am, versus, just painting like some random, scene or whatever. You can try to capture the beauty and take in the moment, but, you're talking about something that's infinite, and to be in touch with that is, that's what I'm trying to do, like, on a daily basis. And so it's, yeah, I guess, that's my way of being individual. And then.
And I have well, first of all, I have to tell you, I heard an interview with Rabbi Daniel Kalish. This is Rabbi Yaakov Langer's podcast, Inspiration for the Nation. And he is the head of the Waterbury Yeshiva. And you'll be happy to hear this, Alex. He was discussing how they integrate art and drama for their students who are talented in these areas to explain and develop the Torah ideas that they're learning, and how like transformative it's been, and how much he's learned from his students who utilize these mediums.
That's awesome. Yeah, it
was really nice to hear that.
Learn more from your students than
that's for sure.
Teachers.
And I have a question for you, because you were in the secular world, you went to Tufts, you went to art school. We have this notion of like artists as being just like completely out of the box, free spirits, do whatever you want. Is there an element of conformity even in that world of the artists?
I used to say this when I was in art school. You could tell how good an artist was by the way they dressed. The crazy ones weren't very good. The ones with the pink hair and the, like whatever, the multiple identities and, whatever it is. Like they're generally 9 out of 10 times. So, and in that way, they were conformists. In like, it's like, whatever, it's a paradigm. So like, so by seeing those, those type of people, it's, it's not, that's not the essence of art. So, that's, essentially, so that was your question, right? Sorry, I'm like.
Yeah. I think as humans, we feel comfortable, where it's a human condition is to want to conform to a certain extent. No one really is completely independent.
Yeah. Oh, and one other thing, you mentioned like the free-spirited type stuff.
Yeah.
If you're too open-minded, your brains fall out type of thing. So there's different, and I didn't know this when I was going to art school too. There's different mahalas, there are different like ways of going into art. So there's the more traditional, which is like, painting an apple in a bowl and that. And then there's the more like, I guess, like open-minded, like liberal side of the art, where it's like, you're throwing stuff at canvas,
Yeah, right.
Looking at
Modern
how beautiful
art.
the drips are, like, dripping down. That's also whatever, very cliche. But I mean, essentially, I find it to be the more reserved and the more laws that you have in art. And, people, they say in art school, they're like, oh, there's no such thing, you're supposed to break the rules. But the thing is, they never learn the rules. So
you have to know the rules to break the rules. They say that with writing as well. I'm a writer. Yep, you got to know your grammar.
Exactly. So I mean, so it's I'm terrible at writing, so I can't even relate to that. But
it's the same concept in any creative field. You
yeah,
have the restraint actually enables you to be more creative. I've heard this before. I think it's really fascinating.
yeah. And so, I mean, that's it. And that, once again, it goes along with halacha, you know, like Judaism. Like, everything's like a parallel. Like, you know, you have these restraints, but at the same time, it opens up possibilities and understanding. Like, to actually, how could you paint Shabbos, you know, a scene of Shabbos, if you've never experienced Shabbos? You know, you have to have the laws, and you have to enjoy the experience of Shabbos, and then you can actually produce that experience. And, you know, it's through the laws you get that freedom. And it's a beautiful, deep thing. And
it is.
People aren't, it's so not in people's psyche to have rules and laws. People just, I mean, the world's crazy now. And,
absolutely. You know, it's so countercultural, right?
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, art is funny because people look at artists as the lawbreakers and the open-ended, but really the old school artists, these master painters, they're the ones that made all the buildings. They're the scientists, and the, you know, they were like the, you know, it was an intellectual side, but now it's just been taken completely opposite. And it's, you know, like, you're a free for all, and it's not like that. It's much more true.
Right. And you can't be a master of something unless there's an actual formula to be a master of. And that's why our artists were, you know, the great masters. And I think that I think that's a really important thing to remember these days when things are really a free for all, you know, and like there's also a whole, I mean, there's a whole nother conversation I'm going to quickly move over, but very briefly, I must say that like also the respect for expertise is like gone out of the window, you know, in our culture. So I think that's also related. Okay. By the way, everyone who is listening and watching, if you have any questions for Haya or Alex, you can just put them in the question box down below, and I'll try to incorporate them in the conversation. Okay. So Haya, I'm really curious if you've had some moments to formulate what you want to say in terms of, you know, individuality and living a Orthodox lifestyle, which definitely some may say could curtail and prevent individuality if we need to, you know, follow certain customs and laws and lifestyles. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Wait, what's the question?
The question is, do you think there's room for individuality in an Orthodox society, an Orthodox lifestyle, an Orthodox culture where we follow, you know, Jewish laws and we live in communities where sometimes there is a level of conformity?
Not yet. I mean, I think in the Jewish community, we need to be more open-minded to accept, you know, not just Ethiopian Jews, but any other, you know, when people convert, or, you know, like all different Jews from all over. I feel like there's not enough, maybe people not curious enough to meet new person. I don't know, but I feel like it's not, even living in Cleveland for 15 years, I still have like a little, you know, like, I don't go out of the house a lot, you know, because like I like my my privacy,
your
but
home
like,
body.
but also like even going outside or for a walk or whatever, I don't feel like people are like willing to ask questions or meet new people, because, you know, a lot of people have their own groups and whatever. And I respect that, you know, but if I see, you know, like when you walk to shul or whatever, you see new people, like a lot of people, like a lot of time I say Shabbat Shalom and people just, you know, walk by. Like, I mean, it's only 2 words, like it's no big deal. You don't have to answer. But like, to me, it's like, because in Israel, it's different. Like everybody are, you know, Shabbat Shalom, you know, like there is a little bit work to do for the Jewish community to be more accepting individual in all type of Jews.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying is so true, because there's a tremendous beauty in living in a Jewish community, but there is certainly the danger of becoming so cloistered that your synagogue, your shul that you daven in has this certain exact type of people that you want to be around, and you've customized it like your iPhone to like meet your needs perfectly, because that's how and I don't mean to sound so cynical, but often that's how sometimes things are. It's like, this is how I feel comfortable with my crew, but you know what? It's not high school anymore. You know what I mean? Like, we need to, I think it is so true. And I think everyone falls into this trap to a certain extent, is we get comfortable with the people that we're comfortable with, and we do not broaden our horizons. And then with the problem is, like you said, is people not even being curious enough to inquire, to ask. Like, when we stop being curious, that we don't even want to learn about other people or meet other people, and we're just very comfortable with how things are, thank you very much.
Yeah.
What we're missing out on so much, you know?
Yeah. 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 It's really, cause like I like in, you know, every day, like I incorporate my, Ethiopian, you know, little, I don't know how to, like, backgrounds to, you know, to do things, to do things in the house. Like on Friday, I make like a special bread for Shabbat. So, you know, like my mom taught me, and we do like Ethiopian coffee ceremony. So it's like, you know, like, you don't see that in other people, but if you come and meet me, I would totally have you in my house, and you know, you can try it and you would love it. But like, people are not curious enough, I think, to or don't care enough to know other people. Not just me, but like in general. That's how I feel. I mean, that's how I feel.
I also want to say that sometimes we're just so overwhelmed with our own lives, you know, and like true. Even keeping up with our own circle of friends is hard enough. Or we're not outgoing, and like, we're not going to be, you know, curious. So there are lots of different reasons, but I think it's just a beautiful idea, and certainly something that we should, you know, think more carefully about. Is the problem is when there's this discomfort with difference, you know, that's the problem. And that's what we want to root out, is more embracing differences, than we need to look a certain way, and we're only going to feel comfortable with people that look like us, I think is also important here in this conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's wrap up. And actually, Haya, you really address this now, is I'd love to hear from both of you, like, how we can encourage and embrace individuality and uniqueness and differences in the Orthodox community, and maybe starting with how we can do it in our own homes for those of us who are parents, so our own children can feel proud of their own differences. So where do we begin? How can we encourage this more in the, you know, in the Jewish community?
To me, it would be education, and just like to teach the kids to accept one another. That's I think if kids know, then it wouldn't be a cycle that the kids would be like not outgoing as the parents are. So like, you know, you say like, we have different Jews from all over, and everything is beautiful, and we all melting pot beautifully, you know. Like, I think with education, and just teach them to be kind to one another and accepting. And I think those are the one that can help people to be more comfortable and more welcoming, I think.
I think also, especially with kids and certainly with teens, like, they feel tremendous pressure to like hang out with just their type of people, you know, with just their friends. And I think if we can encourage that at a younger age, something how you talk so much about in your story is like kindness. Like, forget about accepting different people, just be kind to everyone, you know. It doesn't matter like how different you are. And if you're just trying to do that, kids, I think, will really feel for themselves the benefit of doing a kindness, and like how that makes them feel, and focus less on, you know, the differences and the externals of the, you know, their classmates, and judging them in that way. Someone commented here, certainly like as an immigrant, whether or not, you know, I know my family, my mother's South African, my father's British, and that's, you know, English speaking, Anglo, you know, they're from the outside, you wouldn't know that they're immigrants, but they're tremendous struggles and transitions, because you just feel very different. You come from a different culture, you sound differently, you know. And I think like your story certainly speaks to that too, coming to another country, and, you know, coming to an American Orthodox community, and your kids don't have that many kids around them that look like them, and like that has its own set of challenges.
And also, like, when I speak to my mom in Amharic, my kids are like, how can you manage 3 languages, like, you know, and like,
Wow.
because I tell them
Hebrew.
like they,
Yeah.
you know, they have to learn Hebrew, and, you know, they're always like, how can you manage 3? I barely can manage Hebrew, and, you know, so, that's how kids are. You just have to teach them when they're little. That's,
Right.
I don't know.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. And to be proud of their
Yeah,
heritage, which is something
absolutely.
that's so important for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. And I think within the Orthodox community, we have this idea of minhag, of like customs, and we have people who are from the Sephardi lineage and Ashkenazi lineage, and we actually, it's very much part of our general, or religion, is that there are different customs. People have traditions to do things differently,
Yeah.
and I think we should think about that, and that's something that I think can help us embrace that. Not everyone's gonna like make kiddush on Shabbat the same way that you do. It's sort
Yeah.
of built in our system already a little bit.
Right.
Okay, Alex. Well, finally, how can we encourage and embrace individuality more, and for members of our community?
All right. So yeah, I mean, also definitely with the teaching children, for sure. I 100% agree.
Yeah.
I think now, and you also mentioned it earlier, how there's like a low expectation for skill sets, essentially, or to be like to acquire
Expertise.
something,
Yeah.
expertise.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this lack of just everything's so instantaneous, and I mean, people don't know how to use simple hand tools, this type of thing. And I mean, obviously I
They
have an
don't want to work
appreciation.
hard. I have teenagers. They
They
don't
don't
want
want
to
to,
work hard. I think
unless,
my daughter wants to work harder than my son. I don't know if it's a gender thing too, but the boys forget about it. They just want to get rich quick.
yeah, so you can retire on a beach.
So true.
But at the same time, one of my secrets, for instance, in the Hebrew Academy, when I taught there, I have these teenagers that don't want to work. They're lazy. They just want to show up. And so what did I do? I'm like, okay, let's do stained glass. You get a melt
Oh,
metal,
cool.
you get a cut glass, you get a break glass, you wear goggles, and there's like ventilation, and it's dangerous, and all this stuff. And what it does is, if you introduce them to something and they can realize and they can experience it and have fun, you'll get the most lazy whatever high schooler to like all of a sudden they're so into this because it's so cool. And
Wow.
it's interesting once you acquire. So that's why I like the wood shop. I mean, I said I had the easiest. I had one of the favorite class. It's not like I'm bragging. I mean, I am, I guess. But I mean, my students all the time, they used to tell my boss, hands down, like I have the best class. They're so excited.
Oh.
Like and the reason why is because first of all, you demand like a level, you have your restrictions. Like we're using super dangerous tools. I mean, most schools in New York, they only let you use like a, what's it called? A jigsaw, like a tiny little, whatever, not even a scroll saw. Sorry, not a jigsaw. It's whatever. I mean, it's not.
I don't know, but yeah, I trust you.
But in Dark, they were using like the most industrial, scary tools. And, there was a level of respect. Like if you mess around, you're kicked out of my class. It's a privilege to be here. But when you're here, you could use all these amazing tools. And what happens is when you acquire some sort of skill set or even an appreciation of woodworking or stained glass, and like I'm speaking from art perspective, you start realizing and experiencing other, Rabbi Dessler talks about this, where if you're in one world, that's all you notice, and then if you learn about something, all of a sudden it opens up. So I was speaking to a friend who's an electrician, and he was telling me how when he goes to Walmart or goes to these stores, he's always looking at the ceiling to see the way they wired it, like the engineering behind the stuff, and thinks it's beautiful. And he was showing me pictures, literally, it looked like me, like wires in like a fuse box. But he was saying how beautiful, he's like, look how beautiful this guy taped up all these wires. He does beautiful work. And he appreciates that. And for me, knowing like I have a skill set and I have an appreciation, all of a sudden, like I recognize him and say, wow, this guy is an artist in himself. And it's the same thing with a computer programmer or whatever, whatever field. So, I mean, education to the extent of teaching people that there's other, worlds, there's worlds of electricity and there's worlds, to do that, to open up, all of a sudden you can sit down and have a conversation with somebody who you just totally foreign to you, computer programming to me, all of a sudden, but you start talking to them and then you start seeing like, wow, this guy's like, there's so many ways you can do this and what's the best way and the creativity behind it. And it creates, instead of that person just being a name or a face, it's a being, and you get that appreciation of that individual. And so I think it's so important, and the schools are starting to trend towards that, to just give the kids, other than, not that Torah is not the most important thing, but to just give them the opportunity to experience hands-on real things that they can feel successful and build an appreciation. All you need is appreciation for one thing, and you'll be able to apply it to everything else and everyone you meet. And then all of a sudden, you know, it's like I said, it's not a name and shul. It's like, you know, oh, he's a programmer, and then you just appreciate their skill sets and, you know, that individual. And you know, it breeds. Like my kids, last thing I'll end off, my daughter got it, you know, it was her birthday, and I'm like, I want to get her something. I don't want to just get her some like random toy. I got her, I'm like, what could I get her? So I bought her like a real mini drum set, so that she can even just experience it. And hopefully I sit down with her, I try every night for like 10 minutes and teach her some beats. She's 5. But just so she can know that there's like an avenue where all of a sudden you can start playing with music, and, you know, she can, they just have to be more exposed. I mean, nowadays with COVID, everything's locked down. It's not locked down literally, but I mean, the whole mindset's still there. But to just show kids the opportunity, even people, it can be adults, to realize that there's whole worlds out there. That's what creates an individual, you know, somebody who is able to create their own, basically create their own world, you know. So
I love that.
Yeah.
I love this idea of like looking at people and appreciating them via the skill sets that they offer. I mean, that is just so interesting. And you're right, it opens up your mind, it opens up your world. And I think we can expand this idea also to appreciating different Jews. And even in the Orthodox community, like there's some people in terms of how, you know, they relate to God that are more, you know, intellectual and more learned, and they really connect to Judaism and to Hashem through, you know, learning Torah. And then there are other people that may be like more spiritual in nature, or, you know, often creative types, or, you know, more into like meditation. And like, you could be like, oh, you meditate, you're into that? No, that's not for me. I learn, I'm an intellectual. But they're all different avenues to God, you know? And I think that we can appreciate all different types of Jews themselves and how they serve Hashem, and understand that this is, you know, we're part of this tapestry, and we can look at other people and acknowledge that. And it's just important to acknowledge, you know, you don't have to be like them. It's just acknowledge them. And that's, it's key. Well, thank you both. Yeah. Alex, please go ahead.
Oh, no, just saying, and when you recognize that individuality, that's, you know, that reflects on, you know, the person themselves. See, it's both ways. And that's how somebody can build themselves up, by, you know, appreciating other people, essentially. So,
that's so interesting. Well, it's sort of an exercise in humility too, you know? I think that it's good for, as they say, good for the mitos, good for the character traits.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, Haya and Alex, this has been such a fascinating discussion. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
This is recorded. People often ask, I couldn't be there. I could only be part. It's Instagram. You hop on, you hop off. We are putting this up on the Faces of Orthodoxy YouTube channel that we have. All of our past lives are up there. So check it out on YouTube and subscribe, of course, so you get all the latest updates. Thank you, Banos Aliyah. I know who you are. I don't know if you want to know. I don't know if you want the whole world to know who you are, but I see your comment. Thanks for joining. Thank you all. And please continue to follow the page. And if you did not get a chance to read Alex and Haya's story, definitely go do that now. You are in for a treat.